After the Third Anglo-Afghan War in 1919, which lasted for 2 months, guerrilla leader Amanullah Khan signed the Treaty of Rawalpindi with the British on August 8th. This gave Afghanistan political sovereignty in addition to control of foreign policy. In 1921, it signed its first friendship treaty with the Soviet Union, taking its first steps to establish relations with other countries.
Amanullah, who declared himself king in 1923, wrote a new Afghan constitution in the same year. He strongly pursued Westernization, specifically by modernizing the military, advancing women's rights, abolishing slavery, and introducing secular education. However, tribes disliked and revolted against these Western reforms due to their Islamic religion, just as they did under Rahman Khan.
In 1929, King Nadir Shah assumed the throne in Kabul and quickly abolished most of Amanullah's reforms. Assassinated in 1933, his son Muhammad Zahir became king. Under his reign, which lasted until the coup of 1973, Afghanistan experienced a stable government and economic growth. He remained neutral in international politics, supported women's rights, used foreign financial aid to build infrastructure, and wrote a new constitution in 1964, which made the country a constitutional monarchy. During this time, Afghanistan also joined the United Nations, as well as signed numerous treaties with the Soviet Union. The Soviet manipulated these contracts in order to gain a foothold in the country, investing over $3 billion in projects, including education and military training.
In the early 1970s, Afghanistan experienced severe drought, which resulted in large-scale economic problems. This culminated in the coup d'etat in 1973, when Zahir's cousin, Daud Khan, established a republic and made himself president. 5 years later, after years of tribal fighting, the Soviet Union staged their own communist coup d'etat in the country. By 1983, the Soviets had established military bases in all provinces, meeting resistance from Afghan guerrilla forces known as the Mujahideen, which remained the de facto government of rural and remote areas.
These forces were supported by the United States, China, and Islamic nations through pipeline ammunition supply, with the Stinger missile equalizing the guerrilla forces to the military expertise of the Soviets. The Soviets used the country as a pawn piece in their Cold War strategy, aiming to establish a communist country in Central Asia. The Soviets' motives in Afghanistan were similar to Britain's strategy of using it as a buffer state a century earlier. Many historians agree that the Soviet invasion in Afghanistan is comparable to the United States' involvement in Vietnam, since both were seemingly unwinnable wars. Nevertheless, at the end of the Cold War, there was a call for Soviet retreat.
In 1988, the Soviet Union created a 9-month plan to get their troops out of the country. This plan was completed in 1989, after which there was a period of civil war, until the Pashtun-dominated Taliban seized power in 1996, implementing a strict adherence to the Sharia. They funded terrorist organizations and led their own large-scale violence campaigns, including the destruction of the Buddhas in Bamyan.
On September 11, 2001, Osama bin Laden, leader of al-Qaeda, organized the attacks on the World Trade Center. This precipitated a surge of United States and NATO forces to overthrow the Taliban through supporting the Northern Alliance. By 2002, the Taliban was ousted, but remained influential in southern Afghanistan and were financed through the opium trade. In 2004, a new constitution made Afghanistan an Islamic republic, and Hamid Karzai was elected president.